Hello, everyone. Martin, you mentioned in the class last week that you didn't mean for us to confess our dreams for this project. But I've had a peculiar reoccurring dream these past few weeks, and this project seemed like an opportunity for further exploration. In my dream, I am in a public space trying to find a bathroom, but whenever I find the bathroom, every stall is dirty and unusable. After having the dream for the first time, I looked up the meaning, and the internet told me that my subconscious was looking for relief. I've been struggling with balance in my work, so I accepted this analysis. This project, however, seems like an excellent opportunity to explore this idea of relief further. When I was in Form Studio, Richard Serra's Verbalist was suggested as a reference for how I might construct a narrative within images. It's always stayed with me as a way to guide exploration. So, for this example, the first idea that came to mind, the opposite of relief, was tension. I decided to continue my exploration with the letter A and cut it out of foam core. And then I began to create my setup, again approaching working with a digital screen as I did last week. I began to place the letter form next to the screen in different positions and angles, shooting a few images using the negative shape the character had created from the foam core. I also tried displaying the iPad horizontally to see if that would spark any interesting moments. Ultimately, I went back to a vertical layout so the digital A would be similar in scale to the physical A. I wanted the digital A to appear as if it were coming off the screen, so I duplicated part of the structure and began to place it in direct contact with the screen. These last few images began to remind me of Aaron Sheriff's sculptures, which was also a reference for me during thesis. These next two examples were some of the images I referenced during my thesis. Sheriff blurred the lines between wholeness and incompleteness in many of these compositions. Her sculptures often contain variously arranged planes, which appear to shift when viewed from different angles. Looking up her work this week, I found several new pieces created in the past year. These images resonated with me because there is a precise alignment despite the different textures, perspectives, and planes. Looking back at my images, I realized I was overly concerned with matching angles. The work fell flat and needed more depth. I decided to move forward using these two images on the digital screen. In this next set, I positioned my folded physical letter and stroke segment before the digital screen. I moved them around the setup to see what the different positions suggested. This image stood out to me the most. In its folded state, it suggested it was half a character, making me wonder if I could connect this digital half to a physical half. I returned to the camera and tried to connect the two halves. Looking back at the images on the computer, this one stood out to me. This area highlighted the misalignment between the character in 2D and 3D space. I paused for a day on this work and decided to return to it with fresh eyes. After reflecting on how I might best emphasize the misalignment, I decided to try and start fresh with a new setup, using just parts of the whole letter. I took the images for the first round and then transferred them onto the iPad and began to add a second layer. I tried various arrangements showing both a partial letter or a folded letter form. I wasn't satisfied with any of these images. They felt crowded and disconnected and didn't show the relationship between 2D and 3D that I wanted to feature. It occurred to me that I may have had too many elements. I was trying to let the objects suggest their connections to me, but maybe I needed to exert more control in the arrangement. I went back and photographed one element, translated it to the screen, and then photographed it with one physical object. This image began to display the relationship and the idea of tension that I wanted. At this point, Sarah and I had our Zoom call to share our work. After I shared the images you've just seen, she asked me if I had any plans to anthropomorphize the character. In beginning this project, I intended to create a moment of tension. In doing the work, I began to feel like the character was trying to escape from the screen. I explained to Sarah that I didn't want to expand on that because it felt like a negative narrative. Sarah, however, said she had the opposite interpretation of my images. She explained that she viewed the different characters as belonging together, despite being on separate planes, and that they were trying to become whole again. From this conversation, I decided to proceed with realigning. The character was separated and broken on different planes in different realms, but was, tying back to my original dream, trying to find relief by reuniting with its separate parts. I returned to the camera for one more experiment. I had several pieces of linoleum flooring that I'd wanted to experiment with, and after seeing how Erin Sheriff had incorporated texture into her images, I wanted to try something similar. I cut out a full character and experimented with placing it on the ground as a shadow of the screen character. The first image felt static. I quickly cut the linoleum character apart and tried to align it with parts of the screen character. It was an improvement, but it still felt separate. I then took the piece and bent it to fold down on the screen, touching both the letter of the screen and the ground in the physical space. I was curious to build on the Z-axis quickly, so I updated the screen and attempted to continue to build out the shadow. Including multiple screens emphasizes the various planes. The quick connection here doesn't feel as refined as the former images. I'll consider these my final images for the week. I think that there is potential to continue to build into the screen and connect the different parts, ultimately, hopefully, resulting in the realignment of the whole. I've recognized the key to this process is to work slowly, connecting one piece at a time to its new dimension. Thank you, as always, for watching.